23-year-old Jessie Mae still cries for her mother inside this house, more than 160 years after she died. Visitors swear they hear her sobbing at the top of the stairs, and sometimes she even answers when you call her name. Imagine it, a tiny voice trapped in time, echoing through the halls of what many consider Florida's most haunted home. Imagine, if you will, the Florida frontier in 1855. John L. May, a man with a vision and a dream for a quiet life, built the first 4 rooms of what would become a legendary house. It stood smack in the middle of a dense pine forest, a place that would later flourish into the vibrant town of Brooksville. He wasn't looking for grandeur, just a peaceful haven for his beloved wife, Marena, and their precious little girl. They envisioned a future filled with simple joys, far from the hustle and bustle. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Just 2 short years later, a cruel twist of fate struck. Tuberculosis, a relentless killer of the era, claimed John at the tender age of 35. Marena was left utterly alone, a young widow in a raw lumber home, with little Jessie Mae and a second baby on the way. Can you even begin to comprehend the sheer isolation and terror she must have felt? The dreams of a tranquil life shattered, replaced by the harsh realities of survival. She stayed, though. Through the brutal years of the Civil War, Marena, with an unbreakable spirit, watched Union patrols ride past her front porch, their presence a constant reminder of the conflict raging around her. She clung to her home, her children, and her resilience. Later, she found companionship and a new chapter with Frank Saxon, a Confederate veteran. The house itself, a silent witness to her strength, survived the war. Yet an undeniable shadow, a palpable sense of tragedy, seemed to cling to its walls, much like the fine, yellow dust that perpetually blows in from the nearby limestone quarries, settling on every surface, refusing to be completely wiped away. It was as if the very fabric of the building had absorbed the heartache, setting the stage for the stories that would follow. Locals will tell you, tragedy seeped into the wood grain early, and it never quite left. Fast forward to 1903. The sleepy farmhouse was about to undergo a dramatic transformation. Enter Sheldon Stringer, a prominent cattleman with an eye for opportunity and, more importantly, a flair for architectural grandeur. He purchased the property with big ideas, not just for expansion, but for an entirely new identity. What followed was a spectacular metamorphosis, a dizzying ascent of stories, gables, and wraparound porches, stacked and layered like an elaborate wedding cake. Stringer wasn't just adding rooms, he was crafting a statement. When the sawdust finally settled, the modest cabin had ballooned into an opulent 4-story, 14-room Queen Anne mansion. It was a masterpiece of its time, boasting a distinctive witch hat tower that pierced the Florida sky, intricate spindle-trimmed galleries perfect for catching a breeze, and a labyrinth of over 10,000 hidden nails holding its complex structure together. This wasn't just a house. It was a testament to an era of prosperity and intricate design, a prime example of the ornate Victorian style featuring varied walled textures and complex gable roofs that are still admired today. And with each generation that called the May Stringer home, new curios were added, each telling its own silent story. Delicate Victorian hair wreaths, fashioned from the locks of loved ones, spoke of mourning and memory. A chillingly authentic doctor's exam chair, complete with leather restraints, hinted at the medical practices of a bygone era. And perhaps most poignantly, a child's glass hearse, a miniature final carriage, served as a stark reminder of the fragile nature of life in the early 20th century. Today, the Hernando Heritage Museum reverently cradles these artifacts, preserving not just objects, but echoes of lives lived. But locals, with a knowing wink and a shiver, will tell you that the family, the true residents, never really left. They're still here, woven into the very fabric of the house. If you ask the dedicated volunteers at the Hernando Heritage Museum, they'll tell you straight. They count at least 11 regular residents who, despite passing on, simply refuse to check out. It's not just a few bumps in the night. These are distinct personalities, each with their own story and their own preferred haunts. There's Marena, for instance, the original mistress of the house. Visitors often report seeing her ethereal form gliding along the second-floor hallway, the whisper of her silk skirts brushing against the old pine boards, a timeless elegance in her perpetual vigil. Then, of course, there's Jessie Mae, still 3 years old, still barefoot. She's often spotted peering from the banister, her plaintive call of mama slicing through the subtropical air, chilling you to the bone. It's a sound that has brought many an unsuspecting visitor to a sudden, stunned halt. Downstairs, Dr. Stringer's surgery, tucked discreetly beside the tower stairs, holds a different kind of energy. Many claim they can still detect the metallic tang of ether lingering in the air, accompanied by the fleeting shadow of a man in a waistcoat, forever tending to his unseen patients. And who could forget James, the World War I soldier? He's often heard limping on the grand staircase, the faint, ghostly clinking of his metals, a somber counterpoint to the house's creaks and groans. But perhaps the most infamous resident is Mr. Nasty, a growling, malevolent presence who primarily makes his displeasure known in the attic. This isn't a playful spirit. He's known to aggressively flip EMF meters into the red, sending even the most seasoned paranormal investigators sprinting for the nearest exit. It's a raw, unsettling energy. Tour guides who have seen it all meticulously keep a running log of the phenomena. Inexplicable cold spots even in the sweltering Florida July, glowing orbs that mysteriously appear on 5 different cameras simultaneously, and rocking chairs that creak rhythmically as if occupied, even when no one is physically present. Over 80 paranormal teams, including renowned groups like the Atlantic Paranormal Society, or TAPS, and the Florida Ghost Team, have investigated this house. Every single notebook, without fail, concludes with the same definitive sentence: activity confirmed. It's a level of consistent, corroborated evidence that even skeptics find hard to dismiss entirely. On Friday and Saturday nights, you can experience it yourself. The guides dim the Edison bulbs, hand you flashlights, and invite you to wander. It's an invitation, an almost ceremonial passing of the torch to explore the unknown. Your journey often begins in the parlor, a grand room where Jessie Mae's poignant portrait hangs. Her painted eyes seem to follow your every move, a silent, watchful presence. Guides, seasoned veterans of the house's quirks, offer crucial advice. Invite the spirits, they say, but whatever you do, don't provoke them. And a specific warning: Mr. Nasty, that grumpy attic dweller, absolutely hates sarcasm. You've been warned. In the doctor's office, a palpable sense of unease often descends. Tourists frequently report sudden, intense pressure headaches that materialize out of nowhere, only to vanish the instant they step back into the relative normalcy of the hall. It's a physical manifestation of the lingering energy. Upstairs, a child-sized handprint occasionally appears on a mirror kept meticulously polished for exactly that reason, waiting for the ethereal touch. Perhaps one of the most baffling occurrences involves the tower room, once Sheldon Stringer's private study. It has a heavy door that locks from the inside. Twice, overnight guests, leaving the door ajar for a bit of airflow, have returned to find it mysteriously bolted shut. Who or what is playing these games? As 1 a.m. approaches, the house seems to settle into its own rhythm, a symphony of the supernatural. Floorboards pop and crack like knuckles. The scent of rosewater, impossibly rich and sweet, drifts through the air when the gardens outside are dormant and scentless. And then there's the peculiar phenomenon of flashlight batteries draining in unison, a collective power surge from an unseen source. Finally, as the night draws to a close, guides collect the gear, often a respectful thank you to the spirits for their time, and gently usher everyone out under a sky thick with ancient oak moss and glittering stars. Most visitors chatter nervously on the porch, their voices a mixture of fear and exhilaration, but a few, truly touched by the experience, stand in silent awe, straining to hear just one last sob, one final whisper from the May Stringer house. Would you spend the night here? Drop a ghosty in the comments and tell me, Jessie Mae's hallway or Mr. Nasty's attic? On one of my photos from the May Stringer grounds, the reflections and shadows fell just so, and what looked to me like the faint outline of a little girl in a dress appeared. Eyes, sleeves, even the hem of a gown. I know it's pareidolia, our brains craving patterns. Still, when the house is famous for a child who never grew up, it makes you pause. Trick of the light? Or a reminder that some stories refuse to stay hidden? Do you see her too, or is it just me? So Florida, as you might know, is absolutely packed with old houses, each with its own history and secrets. Yet the May Stringer house consistently tops most haunted lists, standing out in a crowded field. But why though? What makes this particular mansion such a magnet for the paranormal and the curious? Part of it undoubtedly is the meticulously preserved paper trail. We're not talking about vague whispers or urban legends here. We're talking about actual diaries, official doctor's ledgers, and yellowed obituaries that, astonishingly, match up with every single ghostly name associated with the house. This tangible evidence lends a powerful credibility to the spectral claims, making it harder to simply dismiss them as folklore. Then there's the architecture itself. The house, with its narrow staircases and winding corridors, creates natural acoustic funnels where every creak and groan is amplified, every distant footstep echoing like a pursuer. It's almost as if the builders inadvertently designed a perfect stage for a haunting, where sounds play tricks on the mind, blurring the line between imagination and reality. But perhaps the biggest reason these stories stick, truly resonate, might be sheer duration. Think about it. Few homes in the American South managed to stay continuously occupied escaping the wrecking ball through the tumultuous era of Reconstruction, 2 devastating world wars, and the crushing weight of the Great Depression. The May Stringer house did. Each era, each profound historical moment left an emotional residue. We see the raw grief of John May's death in 1858, the pervasive wartime anxiety Marena must have felt in 1864, the medical trauma that undoubtedly occurred in Dr. Stringer's office around 1905, and the silent heartbreak of post-war losses in 1919. Layer after layer, the house absorbed every shock, every joy, every sorrow. It acted like a sponge, soaking up the intense human emotions that unfolded within its walls. Paranormal investigators often refer to this phenomenon as the stone tape theory. The idea is that powerful emotions or traumatic events can somehow be recorded onto the very fabric of a building, much like grooves on a wax cylinder. These recordings then replay themselves when the right person or the right energy walks by. Skeptics, of course, offer a more grounded explanation: suggestion, an overactive imagination, and simply the natural creaking and groaning of an old timber. Yet whether you believe in spectral echoes or settling foundations, the undeniable truth is that the stories of the May Stringer house continue to line up with its documented history, and newcomers, time and again, walk out believers. I first toured the house on a muggy June night alongside my son. We'd come armed with a healthy dose of skepticism, curious but not convinced. The paranormal group running the tour was respectful, but the crowd was too loud for us, so we slipped away to explore on our own. We didn't see, hear, or feel anything out of the ordinary. The only thing that hurt was my back after hours on those stairs. We left around 2 a.m., tired but glad we came. Still, the artifacts fascinated us, and the pit crew showed us photos of their strangest captures. Most we could explain away. A few, not so easily. Enough to keep me curious. Enough to explain why people come back. And that's the thing about the May Stringer. It haunts you, whether or not you see a ghost. Subscribe for more true Florida ghost stories, and ring the bell so you don't miss next week's TMP Haunt, the allegedly haunted and definitely historic Brooksville Cemetery. So ultimately, the May Stringer house is more than just an old building. It's a profound tapestry woven from history and heartbreak. From John May's tragically unfinished dreams to Morena's stoic wartime vigil, from Sheldon Stringer's gaudy ambition to the wide-eyed tourists clutching EMF readers, every single era has left its indelible fingerprints, not just in the dust on the antique furniture, but in the very ether of the place. Maybe the spirits linger because their stories still matter, because they yearn for their narratives to be heard and remembered. Or perhaps, and this is a more cynical thought, the living just can't stand empty rooms, and we project our need for connection onto the silence. Either way, the grand old mansion stands open on Friday and Saturday nights, its lights purposefully low, its doors creaking with unspoken tales, a magnificent Queen Anne time capsule where the past stubbornly refuses to be past. So if you ever find yourself on Brooksville's Main Street after sunset and you hear a child cry faintly for her mother, remember this: you're not alone in the May Stringer house. Everyone who ever lived there, it seems, is still checking the guest list.